In the forgotten folds of Copper Hollow, nestled deep in the rugged hills of eastern Kentucky, two young girls tread the warped, rusted rails of an abandoned train track, scavenging for scraps to keep their family afloat. Clara and Lila Boone, 12-year-old twins, moved with the quiet determination of those who'd learned to survive on the edges of a world that had long since turned its back on their town. Their loyal dog, a weathered Belgian Malinois named Coda, padded ahead, his tan-and-black coat dulled by dust and time. When Coda froze, head low, ears sharp, nose twitching with a scent that spelled trouble, the air shifted. Then came the sound that would unravel their lives. The distant roar of a freight train and a faint, desperate cry rising from the tracks. What they found, bound beneath the scream of steel, wasn't just a stranger. It was a life hanging by a thread, a story buried in dust and silence. What followed wasn't merely a rescue. It was the first flicker of hope in a town abandoned by grace, a tale of sisters, secrets, and the quiet miracle of being found. The morning air in Copper Hollow carried the sharp bite of late November, a brittle cold that seeped into worn jackets and stung chapped hands. A pale sun struggled behind a curtain of gray clouds, casting a dull, amber glow over hills scarred by decades of mining. Once a thriving hub of coal and iron, Copper Hollow now sagged under the weight of its own decay. Rusted sheds creaked in the wind, their tin roofs curling like old paper, and the freight trains that still rumbled through never slowed, as if the town were a ghost they'd rather not see. Clara and Lila walked the tracks in quiet rhythm, their boots crunching gravel worn smooth by time. Their faces, mirror images save for the set of their mouths, bore the roughened look of kids who knew hunger better than classrooms. Clara, the steadier of the two, moved with a quiet focus, her auburn hair pulled into twin braids under a faded blue cap. Her oversized brown coat, patched at the elbows, flapped at her sides, one sleeve pinned up to free her sketching hand. She was the observer, her hazel eyes catching glints of metal or the shift of a shadow before anyone else. Lila, a touch taller and always a step ahead, carried a restless energy, her hands forever twisting bits of string, smoothing the frayed edges of her scarf, or pocketing bottle caps for her collection. Her braids were Messier, her eyes quick to spark with defiance or mischief. She spoke fast, as if words could outrun doubt, a skill honed by years of bartering with scrap dealers who'd sooner dismiss a child. Coda, their 5-year-old Malinois, led the way, his scarred flank and limping gait betraying an old tangle with barbed wire. His eyes, though, were sharp, his nose always working the air. He'd been their mother's dog first, before her health crumbled, and now he was the girl's shadow, fierce and unshakable. His loyalty wasn't just instinct, it was a promise, forged in the lean years when the Boones had little but each other. Back in town, Sarah Boone sat by the window of their sagging cabin, a relic from the mining days with walls that groaned under the weight of winter. At 40, Sarah looked older, her frame worn thin not by age but by illness. A persistent cough that had settled in her lungs after a fall from a factory scaffold 3 years prior. Her chestnut hair, once full and glossy, was streaked with gray and tied loosely back. She wore a patched sweater, her hands trembling as she worked a needle through a piece of cloth, stitching wildflowers onto a faded square. The embroidery hoops she sold at the weekly market brought in just enough to keep the girls fed, though the margins were razor-thin. Her cough came in sharp bursts, dry and stabbing, but she pushed through muttering, "Stay still, damn it," to her shaking fingers, not the thread. On the tracks, Clara crouched, brushing aside gravel to reveal a brass fitting half buried in dirt, its edges green with age. "Might get a dime for this," she said, weighing it in her palm. Lila started to help, but Coda froze, hackles rising, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His ears pinned back, and he bolted forward, nose to the ground. "What's he got?" Lila asked, already running. Clara dropped the brass, her heart lurching. "Something's off." They sprinted after him, their breath puffing in the cold air. Around a bend, where the tracks hugged a low ridge overgrown with briars, they saw her. A woman, bound hand and foot, slumped against the rails. A gray scarf gagged her mouth, her dark hair matted with blood and dirt. Lila stifled a gasp. Coda circled, barking sharply, his tail rigid. Clara dropped to her knees, her fingers brushing the woman's wrist. "She's alive," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The woman's badge, smeared with mud, glinted faintly. Deputy Anna Creed. Her face, bruised and pale, showed the strain of someone who'd fought hard and lost. Mid-30s, with angular features and a jaw clenched even in unconsciousness. The tracks began to hum, a low vibration that crawled up their spines. "Train!" Lila shouted, her voice cracking. Clara clawed at the ropes, her fingers raw against the coarse nylon. "Pull her legs." They dragged Anna, Coda gripping her sleeve with his teeth, tugging with them. The train's horn screamed closer, its rumble shaking the earth. With seconds to spare, they cleared the rails, collapsing in a heap as the freight train roared past, its wind tearing at their clothes, the noise splitting the air like a blade. Anna groaned, her eyes fluttering open. Clara loosened the gag, revealing cracked lips and a faint rasp of breath. "You're safe," Clara whispered. Lila sat back, her hands shaking, bloodied from the rope's bite. Coda licked her palm once, then lay beside Anna, panting but steady, his amber eyes fixed on the horizon. Anna woke in a dim clinic room, the air thick with antiseptic and the musty scent of old wood. A cracked ceiling fan clicked above her, its rhythm uneven. Pain stabbed her side, radiating from bruised ribs, but she was breathing. "Still here," she muttered, almost surprised. The nurse, Tessa Grant, stepped in, her wiry frame moving with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too much to waste time. Mid-30s, with warm brown skin and tight curls tucked under a scrub cap, Tessa checked Anna's chart with a practiced glance. "Lucky you," she said, her voice clipped but not unkind. "A few more minutes, and we'd be calling the coroner, not patching you up." "The girls and the dog," Anna rasped, her throat dry as gravel. "They're fine," Tessa replied, adjusting in 4. "Came by earlier, but you need rest, and they need to keep scraping by." Anna tried to sit up, wincing. "I need to see them." Tessa handed her a crumpled note, the paper soft from handling. "From the quiet one. Said to give it to you if you woke." Anna unfolded it, her fingers stiff. In neat, slanted handwriting, "We didn't know what to do. Sorry about your arm. Clara and Lila. P.S. Coda says hi." She smiled faintly, the corners of her mouth tugging against the ache. That afternoon, Anna drove a borrowed sheriff's truck through Copper Hollow's winding roads, the hills now ablaze with crimson and gold, the trees shedding their last leaves like whispered secrets. Tessa's directions, scrawled on a napkin, led her to the Boone cabin, a sagging structure half swallowed by wild vines and moss. The tin roof was rusted, the porch boards uneven, but a faint curl of smoke rose from the chimney, a sign of life within. Clara answered the door, one eye squinting against the late sun, her expression wary. "It's you," she said flatly. "Deputy Anna Creed," Anna replied, tipping her hat, her arm still in a sling. "I owe you more than words." Clara stepped aside, letting Anna into the dim, tidy cabin. A worn table held a chipped teapot, mismatched chairs crowded around it. A cold fireplace sat heavy with ash, and on the far wall, Sarah Boone sat in a rocker, her embroidery hoop steady in her lap despite her cough. She was tall, her frame hollowed by years of pain, her chestnut hair streaked with gray. Her eyes, sharp despite her pallor, studied Anna. "You're the one my girls pulled off the tracks," she said, her voice hoarse but firm. Anna nodded, removing her hat. "I'm here because of them." Lila peeked from the kitchen, her grin crooked and bright. "You don't look like a corpse anymore." Coda trotted in, his tail flicking once before he sat beside Anna, his gaze steady. She knelt stiffly, scratching his ears, her fingers brushing the scar on his flank. "You're the real hero, huh?" she said softly. Sarah set her needle down, her hands still for the first time. "We didn't expect company." Anna held up a grocery bag, heavy with cans of soup, bandages, and a clinic voucher for Sarah's checkups. Brought some things, she said. No charity, just a debt repaid. Sarah's jaw tightened, pride warring with need. We don't take handouts. Anna met her gaze. It's not a handout. Your girls saved my life. Sarah softened, her shoulders easing. Stay for supper, then. We've got cabbage and cornbread, maybe some beans. Over a simple meal. Steaming cabbage, crumbly cornbread, and weak tea. Anna learned about the girls' lives. Clara's knack for spotting scrap in the underbrush. Lila's collection of bottle caps she strung into wind chimes. Coda's habit of sleeping under the porch when storms rolled in. Sarah spoke sparingly, her cough punctuating the silences, but her pride in her daughters was clear. As the girls cleared plates, Anna leaned toward Sarah, her voice low. What your girls did was more than brave, but someone tied me to those tracks. This isn't over. Sarah's eyes flicked to Clara and Lila, now giggling over a shared joke in the kitchen. Do what you need to, but keep my girls out of it. Anna nodded, her jaw tight. I will. That night, Lila sat on her cot under the window, frost creeping along the glass. She scribbled in a notebook of taped-together paper, her pencil stub sharpened on the rough sill. She came back today. Not a ghost, just a woman who didn't expect us to care. In the next room, Clara sat by Sarah's bed, stitching a new shape into the embroidery. Coda standing guard beside two girls, their hands linked. Her needle moved with slow precision, her lips curved in a quiet smile. By December, Copper Hollow's winds grew sharp, stripping the trees to skeletal branches that rattled like bones. The sisters were out scavenging again, Coda sniffing along a stretch of track that hadn't seen a train in years. Near an old signal post, half buried in frozen earth, Lila unearthed a small iron box, its edges rusted shut. A faint crest was etched on the lid, a hammer crossed with a flame. Think it's worth anything? She asked, turning it in her mittened hands. Clara frowned, her breath clouding. Someone hid it for a reason. They hauled it home in their burlap sack, thinking it might hold coins or tools. That evening, Anna stopped by with a blanket and a tin of canned peaches. Her sling gone but her movements stiff. She froze when she saw the box on the kitchen floor. Where'd you find that? She asked, crouching with slow purpose. By the old fork in the tracks, Lila said, chewing her thumbnail. Anna traced the crest, her face hardening. Iron Veil Company, shut down 15 years ago after a trafficking scandal. This mark wasn't on their public records. It's internal. Sarah, listening from her rocker, coughed sharply. That thing feels like bad news. Anna nodded, her fingers brushing the rusted hinges. It is. Inside, under oil-soaked rags and crumbling paper, was a folded map. Tunnels marked in faded red ink, a symbol repeated. A star within a square. Lila leaned over Anna's shoulder. What's that mean? Anna's jaw tightened. I don't know yet, but I'll find out. The next morning, Anna drove to Lexington to meet a state investigator, a grizzled man named Paul Whitaker. She left Sarah a contact number and gave the girls a firm instruction. If anyone asks about that box, you never saw it. Understood. They nodded, but Lila's stomach twisted. At school, she stared at a missing persons flyer handed out by their teacher, Miss Harper, a gentle woman with silver-streaked hair and a voice like warm honey. One photo stood out. A girl, 16, with sharp eyes and a half-smile, her dark hair falling in waves. Ellie Boone. Same last name, though Lila knew it might mean nothing in a town of tangled kin. But those eyes, holding back laughter or pain, stuck with her. That night, Lila crept to the corner of their bedroom, where Sarah kept an old tin box under a loose floorboard. She pried it open with a spoon, revealing folded receipts, a few coins, and a letter never sent. Dear Ellie, I tell the girls you were fearless. You loved climbing trees, always humming off-key. I pray you're still out there, still humming. Behind it was a faded photo of a young Ellie, maybe 8, her arms around Sarah, both smiling under a summer sky. Lila's chest ached. She slid the letter and photo back, saying nothing to Clara. Not yet. Anna returned from Lexington, her face grim. Whitaker had recognized the star and square symbol, a marker for Iron Vale's hidden trafficking operations. The map pointed to a sealed mine shaft, officially closed but never demolished. Anna stood outside the Boone cabin that evening, watching Clara and Lila laugh through the window as they strung bottle caps into ornaments. Coda curled under the porch, his ears twitching. Anna knew she had to return to that mine, not alone but with backup and answers. But first, she needed to know if Ellie Boone was more than a name on a flyer. Winter tightened its grip on Copper Hollow, the ground hard as iron, the air heavy with the promise of snow. Anna stood at the Iron Vale mine's entrance, a collapsed scar of boards and stone hidden by overgrown briars. Beside her was Agent Lena Stokes, late 30s, with a no-nonsense stare and braids tucked under a tactical cap. Her black fleece and Kevlar vest marked her as FBI, her voice calm but unyielding. "Your report said it's unstable," Lena said, eyeing the entrance. "It is," Anna replied, adjusting her coat. But Coda found another way in. Coda led them to a hidden grate, its edges recently disturbed, the dirt scuffed by boots. The air inside was damp and sour, heavy with mildew and rust. "Someone's been here," Anna said, her flashlight cutting through the dark. Lena's team moved in, silent and precise, their boots muffled on the stone floor. Coda trotted ahead, nose low, his limp barely slowing him. The tunnel split after a few yards, one path blocked by collapsed rock, the other descending into shadow. A faint buzz hummed through the walls, a battery-powered camera. Lena's tech, a wiry man named Sam, disabled it with a handheld device. They breached a steel door, its modern locks jarring against the ancient rock. Inside, they found traces of captivity. Tattered blankets on the concrete, a child's shoe, broken plastic ties, empty water bottles. No people, but the signs were fresh, dust unsettled, a faint smell of sweat lingering. "They moved them," Lena said, her voice low. Anna's chest tightened, her fingers brushing a scratch mark on the wall. "We'll find where." Back at the cabin, Sarah and the girls sat around the table, crafting ornaments from flattened bottle caps and scrap wire. Their laughter was a fragile shield against the cold creeping through the walls. Sarah's cough was softer now, her hands steadier as she guided Clara's needle. Lila thought of Ellie, the letter, the map, her silence heavy. She didn't tell Clara, but the weight of it pressed harder each day. Anna returned to the mine with Lena's team, Coda leading through the frostbitten dawn. At a hidden entrance, he barked urgently, his tail rigid. A scorched keypad guarded a new steel door, its hinges blackened as if someone had tried to burn through. Sam cracked it open, the hinges groaning. Inside, beneath a flickering bulb, 3 figures huddled under blankets. The eldest, a girl of 17, looked up, her face bruised but fierce, her dark hair tangled in familiar waves. "Don't touch them," she said, her voice steady despite her bloodshot eyes. "I'm the one you want." Lena stepped forward, badge visible, her tone calm. "You're not in trouble. We're here to take you home." The girl's gaze flicked to Coda, who tilted his head, his eyes soft. "Is this real?" she whispered. "I've had this dream before." Anna knelt, her voice gentle. "What's your name?" The girl swallowed. "Ellie Boone. They called me Mara for years." Medics moved in, wrapping blankets around Ellie and the 2 younger girls, both frail, no older than 14, their eyes hollow with fear. Ellie stood only after ensuring the others were carried out first, her body shaking as she leaned on Coda, who pressed his muzzle to her thigh. She stroked his ears, her fingers trembling. "Is he yours?" she asked Anna. "No," Anna replied. "He's his own." Outside, agents shouted. An engine roared at the ridge. James Holt, the former deputy who'd run Copper Hollow's shadows, was fleeing in a rusted truck, its tarp flapping. Lena's perimeter team tackled him as the engine sputtered. Holt, graying and bloated from years of hiding, cursed as they cuffed him. His phone, 3 SIM cards, and a notebook filled with coded names spilled from his coat, along with a thumb drive that Anna knew held worse than they'd imagined. "You should have stayed dead," he spat at her. "Yet here I am." she said, her voice ice. That night, Ellie stepped into the Boone cabin, her frame swamped in borrowed clothes, her face hollow but alive. Sarah froze, her embroidery falling to the floor, then ran to her, sobbing. "It's you." Ellie hugged her mother, then Clara and Lila, who clung to her like she might vanish. Lila offered a cloth square, embroidered with a dog and 3 flowers. Ellie's fingers trembled as she took it. "I waited so long," she whispered. "We never forgot," Clara said, her voice breaking. Months later, the courthouse in Copper Hollow buzzed with a crowd it hadn't seen in decades. James Holt, stripped of power, faced 50 years for trafficking, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Judge Clara Wren, her steel-gray hair in a tight bun, delivered the sentence with a voice that carried no malice, only justice. Ellie sat with Sarah, whose frame had filled out with proper care, her cheeks flushed with color. Anna had secured them a duplex near the clinic, far from the tracks but close to hope. Outside, Coda wore a silver medal on a velvet collar, honored by the mayor, a soft-spoken man named Henry Tate, for his courage. Clara, now in a scarf knitted with green leaves, clapped loudest. Lila whispered, "We're making him bacon tonight." Ellie knelt beside Coda, her eyes misting. "You didn't just save me. You showed me how to be brave." Ellie volunteered at the community center, a once-crumbling building now alive with fresh paint and warm blankets. She sat with women too afraid to speak, held children who flinched at shadows, and brewed tea with steady hands. The coordinator, Ruth Carter, a woman with cropped curls and a raspy voice, had doubted Ellie's readiness but now saw her strength. "I'm not proving anything," Ellie told her. "I'm healing with them." At home, Sarah baked bread, the kitchen warm with cinnamon and hope. Clara sketched the hills, Lila wrote in her journal, their stories weaving the past into something they could hold. In spring, the sisters planted a maple sapling near the tracks, tying a green ribbon to its trunk. Ellie smiled, her voice soft but sure. "This place tried to bury me. Now it's where I grow." Miracles come quietly. In a dog's bark, a sister's courage, a ribbon on a tree. We're all called to see the forgotten, to lift them up. Share this story if it stirred you, and hold close those who walk beside you through the dark.